So you're considering having a scalp micropigmentation treatment for your hair loss, but what happens if your hair turns grey as you get older? Will it look strange? In this video, we're going to find out. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's Justin Davids here from Scalp Culture, your go-to source for everything scalp micropigmentation related. If you're new here and would like to see similar content to this in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel and tap the bell icon to get notified each time we upload a new video. Be sure to stick around to the end of this video where I'll be giving you a few tips which are especially useful if you have light or grey hair and are considering having the scalp micropigmentation treatment. All of the links to everything we discuss in this video can be found in the description box below. So let's jump into it. SMP or scalp micropigmentation is the fastest growing hair loss solution in the world due to the guaranteed results that it offers. With SMP being a relatively new treatment, it makes perfect sense that you'll have some questions about the treatment and the treatment process. Some of the concerns which may have crossed your mind will be what happens to the treatment if your hair turns grey as you age? And will the treatment look darker than your grey hair? And will you have dark dots showing on your scalp if your hair was to turn grey? Don't worry, you're not alone in thinking this, and we get asked this question many times. The answer is not as complex as you might think. So right now we're going to dive into what happens to the SMP treatment if your hair was to turn grey as you get older. So to start, the scalp micropigmentation treatment will not cause any issues if your hair was to turn grey later on in life. One of the reasons for this is the type of pigment that we use for scalp micropigmentation. Many people assume that scalp micropigmentation is performed using a black pigment or ink, but this isn't quite the case. In fact, the pigment that we use for scalp micropigmentation is a carbon-based pigment, or some refer to it as a charcoal-based pigment, which we dilute from very dark shades of grey to very light shades of grey, as seen in our pigment mixing chart. As you can see here on the mixing chart, for darker skin tones and darker hair types, we use a darker shade of pigment. And for lighter skin tones and lighter shades of hair, we use a lighter shade of pigment. The scalp micropigmentation treatment is designed to match your hair at a short length, often referred to as a buzz cut. When shaving your hair to the required length for SMP, the hair becomes a shade rather than a colour, no matter what colour your hair is when it's at a longer length. If you look at somebody with longer hair, you can initially think that the hair is the same colour the whole way down to the root. But if you look closer, you'll actually see that the root is a darker colour or tone, unless you have black hair, which is usually the same colour the full way down to the root. Once we shave the hair down to a short length, we are left with the shade of the root, and that is a shade which we are matching the SMP pigment to. The exact shade of pigment which we will use for your treatment will be determined once you arrive at the clinic. The SMP treatment is designed to gradually lighten over time, which actually isn't a bad thing. Although the treatment will never disappear and once completed is permanent, it will gradually lighten and settle over the years. This is why most clients require a quick touch-up session every few years just to keep it looking fresh. And a touch-up session usually only lasts around 1 to 1.5 hours, and then you're good to go again for another few years. If your hair was to turn grey, this simply means that you may not need to come back into the clinic for a touch-up treatment session. You'll simply allow the treatment to lighten in shades of grey as your hair turns grey over time. There's actually other bonuses to the scalp micropigmentation treatment lightening over time. Imagine yourself as a 25-year-old male who is suffering from hair loss and decides to go and have the SMP treatment. At this age, you're still young, so you'll probably be looking for a fresh and up-to-date look from your SMP treatment. For example, a younger male may request for their SMP treatment to have a darker overall appearance and for the hairline to be stronger. Now let's fast forward to the same male being 40 years old, you've grown, you've matured, and you want a softer, more natural look to your SMP treatment to suit your current appearance. As your treatment has lightened and settled over time, you may appreciate that lighter, softer look. Another great advantage to this settling process is that you can actually make slight changes to your scalp micropigmentation design. If, for example, you had chosen a sharper hairline from your SMP treatment when you were younger, over time it would have lightened enough for us to be able to soften the hairline design. So to recap, the scalp micropigmentation treatment is performed using shades of grey which will lighten over the years. As your hair turns grey over time, the treatment will also be lightening in shades of grey. Therefore, it will match in with your greying hair. If your treatment was to lighten a little too much over the years, you just simply need to book back back into the clinic for a quick touch-up session and you'll be good to go again for another few years. If you have questions about scalp micropigmentation, please drop them in the comment section below and I'll be sure to read through and may answer them in a future video. Now I have 3 bonus tips for those who are considering having a scalp micropigmentation treatment but have grey hair. Tip number 1. It's only natural that you may be a little nervous before going in for your first treatment session as you're not quite sure what to expect. You may have concerns about the treatment looking too dark or too obvious. All you need to do is simply ask your SMP artist to keep it on the lighter shade for the first session while you're getting used to it, and then you can always adjust it and darken it on the next session if you wish. Most SMP artists should be happy to do this because they understand that we can add to the treatment but we can't take away from the treatment, meaning we can darken it but we can't make it lighter. Just be aware that if you are asking the artist to keep it lighter on all of your treatment sessions when the artist knows that it needs to go darker, then you may need to darken it at a later date and this might come at an additional cost to yourself. Tip number 2. If you want to ease into your new look, you can always ask your SMP artist to keep your hairline slightly higher on the first session and then lower it on the second session. Again, we can always add to your treatments, but we cannot take away from it. This is a process that we automatically follow at Scalp Culture, and it just allows you time to get used to your new look before committing to how low you actually want your hairline to be. I've mentioned this tip in this video because guys who have grey hair are usually of a mature age and they can become a little concerned that the treatment might look a little bit too youthful for their current appearance. Tip number 3. If you are dyeing your hair, we recommend that you stop dyeing your hair a couple of weeks before your treatment appointment to give your roots enough time to show their natural hair colour. This way, when your SMP artist shaves your hair to a short length, they can be sure that they are matching the SMP treatment to your natural hair colour rather than the colour of the hair dye. Be sure to let your SMP artist know in advance if you do currently dye your hair. If you found this video informative and helpful, please consider supporting the channel by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see future content like this, and please feel free to check the links in the description box below. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next one.